I watched my mother's face drain of color as the cashier at Whole Foods smiled at me and said, "Congratulations on your PhD, Dr. Chen. Your grandmother was just in here yesterday showing everyone your graduation photos. She must be so proud." The paper bag of organic vegetables slipped from Mom's hand, scattering bell peppers across the polished floor. What? What graduation?" she whispered. I adjusted my Chanel sunglasses and smiled sweetly at the cashier. "Thank you so much. Yes, my grandmother couldn't stop crying during the ceremony. It was a beautiful day." My mother stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Behind her, my sister Jessica, golden child Jessica, beloved Jessica, clutched Mom's arm, her perfectly made-up face contorted in confusion. "You graduated?" Jessica's voice pitched high and sharp. "From what? When?" "Oh, I said casually, accepting my bags from the cashier. "Just my PhD in neuroscience from Stanford. It was last Saturday. The weather was perfect for it." "Last Saturday?" Mom's voice cracked. "But last Saturday we were at Jessica's piano recital." "Yes," I agreed, my smile never wavering. "I know exactly where you were." I had died knowing where they were, too. In my first life, I had stood alone at my graduation, scanning the crowd desperately for familiar faces that never came. I had called Mom 17 times that day. 17 calls that went to voicemail because Jessica needed her hair done perfectly for a performance at a local community center. I had driven home after the ceremony, still in my doctoral robes, and found them all celebrating Jessica's successful rendition of Chopin. They had looked at me like I was interrupting something important. "Oh, was that today?" Mom had said, barely glancing at my regalia. "Well, it's not like it's a real graduation. You've already been to college?" That night, I had written them out of my will, not that it mattered. 3 months later, a drunk driver had sent me into the Pacific, and I had died knowing I was unloved. But then I had opened my eyes in my childhood bedroom, 12 years old again, with every memory of my future life intact. Now, watching my mother's face crumble in the middle of Whole Foods, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "I need to go," I said, checking my phone. "Grandmother and I have lunch reservations at the French Laundry." "Grandmother?" Jessica sputtered. "You mean Dad's mom? But she never talks to you?" I finished. "I wonder why that is." I walked past them, my heels clicking against the tile, leaving them standing in a scattered pile of vegetables and shattered assumptions. The abuse hadn't started all at once. When I was born, I was told my father had left. Just walked out 3 months after I arrived, like I had somehow broken the family by existing. My mother had never forgiven me for it. Jessica was born 2 years later, product of my mother's whirlwind. Romance with Richard Chen, a successful investment banker who adopted me out of obligation but never love. Jessica had Richard's delicate features, his easy charm, his natural grace. I looked like the man who abandoned us. Tall, angular, awkward. A living reminder of my mother's first failure. By the time I was 8, the pattern was set. Jessica got piano lessons, ballet classes, tutors, and endless attention. I got hand-me-downs and absent-minded head pats. When I won the regional science fair at 10, Mom missed the ceremony because Jessica had a stomachache. When I got accepted to every college I applied to with full scholarships, they took Jessica to Disneyland to celebrate her making the JV cheerleading squad. But it was in high school when the cruelty became calculated. I had been accepted to Stanford at 16, a year early, with a full ride. The letter came on a Tuesday. I ran downstairs trembling with excitement to find Mom and Richard at the breakfast table with Jessica. "I got in," I had shouted, waving the letter. "Stanford, full scholarship." Mom had glanced up from buttering Jessica's toast. "That's nice, honey. Jessica, eat your breakfast. You have auditions today." "Did you hear me?" I had pressed. "Stanford. I'm going to Stanford." Richard had finally looked at me, his expression flat. "Congratulations. Don't expect us to pay for anything beyond what the scholarship covers. We're saving for Jessica's Juilliard applications." Jessica, 14 and already viciously aware of her power in this house, had smirked at me over her orange juice. That was when I learned I was only worth what I could achieve entirely on my own. Any success I had would be minimized, any failure magnified. I was the practice child, the rough draft they had gotten wrong before perfecting their technique with Jessica. In my first life, I had died at 28, having earned my PhD through grinding work, working 3 jobs to support myself through graduate school while they paid for Jessica's multiple failed ventures. A boutique that closed in 6 months, a lifestyle blog that never gained traction, an organic skincare line that poisoned 3 people with unlabeled allergens. I had died having achieved everything alone, and I had died alone. But this life would be different. When I woke up 12 years old again, I had laid in bed for 3 hours, processing the impossibility of it. Then I had gotten up, walked to my desk, and written down everything I remembered. Every stock that would explode, every cryptocurrency before it existed, every major world event I could recall. But more importantly, I remembered the will that sat in a safety deposit box in my first life. The will that left everything to my grandmother, my father's mother, Helen Chen. In my first life, I had found her when I was 23. She had been searching for me for years, cut off by my mother and Richard, who wanted nothing to do with my father's family. Grandmother Helen was wealthy, powerful, and heartbroken that her son had abandoned me. When we finally connected, she became the family I never had. She had been the only one at my funeral who actually wept. So, at 12 years old, armed with knowledge and a second chance, I had forged a permission slip for a school field trip, taken a bus to Palo Alto, and knocked on my grandmother's door. I remembered the moment she opened it. She had gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You look just like him," she had whispered. "Just like my Thomas." "I'm Sarah," I had said, "your granddaughter, and I think we need to talk." I told her everything. Not about the rebirth, but about the neglect, the favoritism, the casual cruelty. I showed her report cards my mother never looked at, award certificates that had been thrown in drawers, acceptance letters to gifted programs that were denied because they conflicted with Jessica's schedule. Grandmother Helen had listened with growing horror. Then she had called her lawyers. Within a month, I had a trust fund. Within 6 months, I was legally able to make my own educational decisions. Within a year, I had a full support system that operated completely outside my mother's knowledge or control. I had learned quickly to hide it, to still wear the hand-me-downs at home, to still pretend I was the overlooked child. But on weekends, I studied at the library. I was actually at grandmother's estate, learning business, finance, strategy. She introduced me to her network, powerful women in tech, medicine, law. She paid for real tutors, college counselors, leadership programs. "You're going to be magnificent," she told me once. "And one day, they're going to realize what they threw away." I had smiled and thought, I know, I've already seen that future. This time, I'm just making it better. At 16, I graduated high school, a year early again. I didn't tell my parents about the ceremony. I just didn't come home that Saturday. When I returned Sunday evening, no one had noticed I'd been gone. At 20, I finished my undergraduate degree in neuroscience from Stanford with minors in business and computer science. The commencement ceremony was beautiful. Grandmother Helen was there, along with her friends from her philanthropy circle. We took hundreds of photos. I came home to find Jessica's 21st birthday party in full swing. No one asked where I'd been. At 24, I completed my PhD, 3 years ahead of my first life's timeline. I had started 2 companies during grad school, one developing neural interfaces for prosthetics, another creating AI-driven diagnostic tools for early Alzheimer's detection. Both were funded entirely through grandmother's network and my own earnings from strategic investments I had made using my foreknowledge. I was worth $43 million. My mother thought I was a struggling graduate student eating ramen. The morning of my PhD graduation, I had received the usual family text thread full of messages about Jessica's piano recital. "Mom, everyone needs to be there by 2 p.m. Jessica's been practicing for months." "Richard, reserve the front row. Sarah, can you pick up the flowers?" I had texted back, "Can't make it, have plans." Mom's response, "This is important. Your sister needs family support." Me. "I understand. Good luck to Jessica." I had turned off my phone and put on my doctoral robes. The ceremony was everything it should have been. I walked across that stage with my name announced as Dr. Sarah Chen, youngest graduate in my cohort, recipient of the Departmental Excellence Award, with 6 published papers in Nature and Science. The crowd had applauded. Grandmother had sobbed with pride. My mentor, Dr. Patricia Huang, a Nobel laureate who had personally recruited me to her lab, had hugged me and whispered, "You're going to change the world." After the ceremony, we had gone to an early dinner at the French Laundry. Grandmother had invited 15 of her closest friends, all titans in their fields. They had toasted me, celebrated me, treated my achievement as the momentous occasion it was. I had gotten home at midnight. The house was dark except for the living room, where Mom and Jessica were going through photos from the recital on the big screen TV saw. "Oh, you're back," Mom had said absently. "Can you help Jessica upload these to Instagram? She wants the lighting to be perfect." I had stood there, still wearing my Stanford sweatshirt over my dress, feeling the weight of my diploma in my bag. "I'm tired," I had said. "Good night." Neither of them had looked up. That was a week ago, and I had decided it was time. After the encounter at Whole Foods, I drove back to my apartment in San Francisco, a penthouse in Pacific Heights that Grandmother had helped me purchase under an LLC. My family thought I lived in graduate student housing. My phone was exploding with calls and texts. I ignored them all and poured myself a glass of wine, standing at my floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. Finally, I called Grandmother. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. "Perfect," I said. "You really showed everyone those photos?" "Every single person in that Whole Foods," she confirmed, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I made sure to mention it was at Stanford, that you're Dr. Chen now, that you've already been offered positions at 3 different research hospitals and 2 tech companies. I may have also mentioned your net worth." "You didn't." "I absolutely did." The look on Carol Henderson's face, your mother's friend from her book club, priceless. She kept saying, "Little Sarah? Awkward Sarah? That can't be right." I laughed, the sound surprising me. When was the last time I had laughed about my family? "They called me," Grandmother continued, her voice hardening. "Your mother, 30 minutes ago, crying, saying there must be some misunderstanding, that you couldn't have graduated because you would have told them." "What did you say?" "I said that you invited them multiple times. I said that I had to hear from you how they missed your high school graduation, your college graduation, and now your PhD graduation because they were too busy with Jessica. I may have also mentioned that I've been at every single one of your events for the past 8 years, and I've never seen them once." How did she respond? "She tried to claim you never told her about any of it. So I emailed her screenshots. Every invitation you sent, every ignored text, every voicemail you left. I saved them all, dear. You sent me copies, remember?" I did remember. Grandmother had insisted I document everything, even as I assured her I didn't care what they thought. "She's claiming it's a misunderstanding," Grandmother said, "that you must have had the dates wrong in the messages, or—" "The messages have timestamps," I interrupted. Yes, I pointed that out. Then she started crying about how you must hate her, how she's failed as a mother, how she doesn't understand what happened to her sweet little girl. "What happened?" I said coldly. "Is that her sweet little girl grew up neglected and decided to stop begging for crumbs of affection from a table that was never set for her." "Beautifully put, darling. Should I expect you for dinner Sunday? I'm having the board members from your company over. They're all very excited to meet you officially." "I'll be there," I promised. After I hung up, I finally looked at my phone. 47 missed calls, 32 text messages. "Mom, Sarah, please call me. We need to talk about this misunderstanding." "Jessica, why are you doing this? Making Mom cry? What's wrong with you?" "Richard, this is inappropriate behavior. Call your mother immediately." Mom again. "I don't understand what I did wrong. Please talk to me." Jessica again. "Grandmother Helen is telling everyone lies about us. You need to fix this." I sipped my wine and opened my laptop. It was time for phase 2. In my first life, I had learned about trusts, estates, and legal structures out of necessity, working as a consultant for a law firm during grad school. This time, I had learned them at grandmother's knee, with the best estate lawyers in California as my tutors. I pulled up the documents I had been preparing for months. The first was a comprehensive dossier on Jessica's businesses. In my first life, she had gone through my parents' money like water through a sieve. This time, I had tracked every failed venture, every loan that was never repaid, every investment opportunity that was actually a scam she was too naive to see through. The boutique that failed? I had documentation showing she had spent $200,000 of their money on inventory she never sold, most of which was still sitting in a storage unit she was paying $500 a month for. The lifestyle blog, she had paid $50,000 to a social media guru who gave her a generic template and disappeared. The skincare line? I had FDA reports, hospital records of the allergic reactions, and legal correspondence showing Richard had paid $150,000 in settlements to keep it quiet. Total financial damage to my parents from Jessica's ventures, $847,000. Total financial support they had given me in my entire life, $3,200, mostly for mandatory school supplies. The second document was more personal, a timeline of every significant event in my life, cross-referenced with what my family was doing instead. Science fair win at 10, Jessica's dance recital. State championship debate team at 14, Jessica's Sweet 16 party. Early acceptance to Stanford at 16, Jessica's breakup crisis that required a family therapy retreat. College graduation at 20, Jessica's birthday trip to Paris. PhD defense at 24, Jessica's latest business launch party. The pattern was undeniable, damning, and meticulously documented. The third document was the most devastating. Grandmother Helen had hired a private investigator years ago, and we had evidence of something I hadn't known in my first life. When I was 17, I had been nominated for a prestigious scholarship that would have covered not just college, but provided a $50,000 annual stipend for living expenses and research. The foundation had called my house to inform my parents. Richard had told them I wasn't interested. He had declined a $250,000 opportunity on my behalf without asking me, because he didn't want me to get a big head, and because the award ceremony conflicted with Jessica's college audition tour. I had only discovered this in my second life when grandmother's investigator found the records. The foundation had been confused by the decline, since my application had been so enthusiastic. They had sent a follow-up letter to my house. Richard had thrown it away. That letter, retrieved from the foundation's archives, was included in my dossier. I compiled everything into a single PDF, beautifully formatted with a table of contents and executive summary. Then I saved it. Tomorrow was Sunday. I knew exactly what would happen. Sunday morning, my phone rang at 8 a.m. "Mom," I answered. "Hello?" "Sarah." Her voice was thick with tears. "Please come to brunch today. We need to talk about all of this. There's been such a terrible misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" I asked, my voice neutral. "About your graduation." "Sweetheart, if we had known—" "I sent you the invitation," I said. 3 months ago. I texted you the week before. I called you the morning of. I don't remember receiving any of that." "I can forward you the messages again if you'd like. They have timestamps." Silence. "Please," she finally said, "just come to brunch. Let's talk about this face to face. As a family." "What time?" I asked. 11. We'll make all your favorites." I almost laughed. She didn't know any of my favorites. "I'll be there," I said and hung up. I dressed carefully. In my first life, I had always dressed down around my family, never wanting to seem like I was showing off. This time, I wore Valentino, a simple sheath dress in cream that had cost $3,000, paired with Louboutin heels and a Cartier watch. I pulled my hair back in a sleek bun and applied minimal makeup. I looked exactly like what I was: successful, wealthy, untouchable. I arrived at 11:05, deliberately late. Mom opened the door, and I watched her eyes widen as she took in my appearance. "Sarah," she breathed, "you look different." "I am different," I agreed, walking past her into the house. The dining room table was set with their good china, the stuff that only came out for important guests. Richard sat at the head of the table in a suit, like this was a business meeting. Jessica was there too, in a sundress, her eyes red-rimmed. "Sarah," Richard said, standing. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." I sat, crossing my legs and setting my Hermes bag on the chair beside me. I watched Jessica's eyes track the bag, saw her do the mental math of its cost. "So," I said pleasantly, "you wanted to talk?" Mom sat down, twisting her napkin in her hands. "We want to understand what's been happening. Grandmother Helen has been telling people—" "The truth?" I suggested. "Lies," Jessica snapped. "She's been telling people we neglected you, that we're terrible parents." "Aren't you?" I asked mildly. The room went silent. Richard cleared his throat. "Sarah, we understand you're upset that we missed your graduation. That was an unfortunate scheduling conflict." "It wasn't a scheduling conflict," I interrupted. "It was a choice. You chose Jessica's community center piano recital over my PhD graduation from Stanford, just like you've chosen Jessica over me for my entire life." "That's not fair," Mom said, tears starting. "We love you both equally." "Stop," I said, and the coldness in my voice cut through her tears. "Just stop. We're not doing this. We're not pretending. Not anymore." I pulled out my phone and opened the PDF. "I'm going to send you something. Check your email." I watched them all pull out their phones, watched their faces as they opened the document, watched the color drain from their faces as they began to read. "This is—" Richard's voice trailed off. "A comprehensive documentation of the last 16 years of my life," I said. "Every achievement you missed, every event you skipped, every opportunity you sabotaged." "We didn't sabotage," Mom started. "Page 47, I said crisply. "The Westinghouse Scholarship, $250,000. Richard declined it on my behalf without telling me." Richard's face went gray. That was— You were so young. I didn't want the pressure. You didn't want me to have an advantage Jessica didn't have," I corrected. "You didn't want me to succeed too visibly, too publicly. It might make Jessica feel bad." "That's not true," Jessica burst out. "They never tried to hold you back." "Pages 12 through 38, I said, looking at her directly. "A financial breakdown of every dollar they've spent on you versus every dollar they've spent on me. The ratio is roughly 157 to 1. You've received over $800,000 in the last 8 years alone. I've received less than $4,000 in my entire life." Jessica's mouth opened and closed. "But you had scholarships." "Because I had to," I said. "Because there was no other option. Because while you were getting your third failed business funded, I was working 3 jobs to afford food." "You never told us you were struggling," Mom said. "If we had known, you would have done nothing," I said flatly. "Because you didn't want to know. Every time I tried to talk to you about my life, you changed the subject. Every achievement I earned, you minimized. Every time I needed support, you were too busy with Jessica." "That's not how I remember it," Mom whispered. "How convenient for you," I said. "Unfortunately for your memory, I have documentation. Would you like me to continue? We can go through it page by page. Every birthday you forgot. Every school event you missed. Every time you chose Jessica over me." "This is insane," Jessica said, her voice shaking. "You're acting like we abused you or something. You're so dramatic." I looked at her, really looked at her. In my first life, I'd loved Jessica despite everything, had made excuses for her, blamed our parents instead of her. But she had been an active participant in my neglect, and she had enjoyed it. "Do you know what abuse is, Jessica?" I asked quietly. "It's not just hitting someone. It's making a child feel worthless. It's systematically destroying their self-esteem. It's favoritism so extreme that one child grows up knowing she's only valued for what she achieves alone, while the other grows up entitled and unprepared for the real world." "I'm not entitled," Jessica shouted. "You're 26 years old," I said. "You've never held a job for more than 6 months. You've failed at 3 businesses that cost our parents over $800,000. You still live at home, and you genuinely believe you're more successful than I am." Jessica's face flushed red. At least I have a family who loves me. At least I'm not some bitter, twisted. Jessica, Richard said sharply, but I smiled. Go ahead, finish that sentence, tell me what I am. She pressed her lips together, tears streaming down her face. I stood up. I came here today to give you all an opportunity, a chance to acknowledge what you've done, to apologize, to maybe begin building something real. We're apologizing, Mom said desperately. Sarah, we're so sorry we missed your graduation. We're sorry if you felt neglected. If I felt neglected? I repeated. That's not an apology. That's a denial dressed up with pseudo-remorse. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. I picked up my bag. Here's what's going to happen. I'm leaving. You're going to sit here and read that entire document, all 127 pages. And then you're going to understand exactly what you did to me. And then what? Richard asked, his voice hard. What do you want, Sarah? Money? Is that what this is about? I laughed, the sound bitter. Money? I'm worth $43 million, Richard. I don't need anything from you. The shock on their faces was exquisite. My companies are valued at $80 million combined, I continued. I own property in 3 cities. I have investment portfolios that generate more in a month than you make in a year. Grandmother Helen has already revised her will. Everything goes to me, not $1 for any of you. You manipulated her, Mom gasped. You turned her against us. I told her the truth, I said, and she believed me because she saw the proof. She watched you all ignore me for 8 years while she was in my life. She came to my events. She saw the empty seats where you should have been. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. One more thing. That trust fund you set up for me when I was born, the one from the life insurance payout when my father died? They all froze. Yes, I said softly. I found out about that too. $150,000 that was supposed to be for my education and care. You spent it, every penny, on Jessica's boutique. Mom's face went white. How did you... I have access to the estate records, I said. My father's lawyer is still alive. He was horrified to learn what you did with it. That money was legally mine, held in trust, and you misappropriated it. That's a felony, by the way. You wouldn't, Richard said, but his voice shook. No, I agreed. I won't report you. Do you know why? Because having you arrested would imply you're worth the effort. Instead, I'm just done. We're done. Don't call me, don't text me, don't show up at my apartment or my office. You are no longer part of my life. Sarah, please, Mom sobbed. You're my daughter. Then you should have acted like I was, I said. I walked out and closed the door on her crying. The next week, I learned through grandmother's network that my family was imploding. Mom had called everyone they knew, trying to get sympathy, telling people how her ungrateful daughter had turned on her. But grandmother had already salted the earth. She had made sure every member of their social circle saw the photos from my graduation, heard about my success, and understood that I had achieved it all while being systematically neglected. Public opinion turned sharply against them. Carol Henderson, Mom's book club president, had actually taken Mom to lunch to express her disappointment. How could you miss all 3 of her graduations? She had asked. And she's a doctor. Now, from Stanford! Jessica had tried to leverage the drama for her Instagram following, posting teary videos about family betrayal and jealous siblings. It had backfired spectacularly when someone had found my LinkedIn profile and posted it in the comments. PhD in neuroscience, founder of 2 biotech companies, published author in multiple peer-reviewed journals. The comments had been brutal. Your sister is a literal genius and you're crying about her success? Maybe if you had spent less time on Instagram and more time supporting your sister? She has every right to cut off toxic family members, even if they're related by blood. Jessica had deleted the videos within 24 hours, but the screenshots had already spread. Richard had tried a different approach, reaching out to mutual connections in the business world to warn them about my instability and family issues. That had backfired even worse when grandmother Helen, a legend in Silicon Valley philanthropy with connections to every major tech founder, had made it known that she fully supported me and considered Richard's behavior toward me unconscionable. Within a week, Richard's reputation had taken enough hits that his firm had quietly asked him to take a leave of absence. I watched it all unfold with detached satisfaction. I hadn't destroyed them, I had simply let the truth destroy them. 2 weeks after the brunch, I got a letter. Actual physical mail, delivered to my apartment. Inside was a handwritten note from my mother. Sarah, I've been doing a lot of thinking, reading the document you sent, trying to understand where everything went so wrong. You're right about all of it. I wish I could say there was some explanation, some reason that would make it better, but there isn't. I was a terrible mother to you. I let my hurt over your father's abandonment poison how I saw you. Every time I looked at you, I saw him leaving, and I couldn't separate that from who you were. Jessica was Richard's daughter, completely. She didn't remind me of any pain. Loving her was easy. And I took the easy path. I'm so sorry. I know this doesn't fix anything. I know an apology now, after everything, is meaningless, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did to you, and if I could go back and change it, I would give anything to be the mother you deserved. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to contact me. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything, and I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to be better. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. You became extraordinary despite me, not because of me, and that's both the greatest testament to your strength and my greatest shame. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. It was a good apology, maybe even sincere. But it was 28 years too late, or 16 years in this timeline. Either way, too late. Didn't respond. 3 months after my graduation, I was featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list in the science category. The article detailed my research on neural interfaces, my 2 companies, and my trajectory as one of the youngest PhD recipients in Stanford's history. They interviewed me about my background. I told them the truth. I had grown up overlooked and underestimated, had funded my entire education through scholarships and my own work, and had built my success from nothing. What drove you? The interviewer asked. I thought about my first life, dying alone and unloved. I thought about waking up 12 years old again with a second chance. I thought about every missed event, every dismissal, every moment I had been made to feel worthless. I was raised to believe I had to earn every ounce of love and recognition I received, I said. So I decided to earn so much that it would be impossible to ignore me. And then I decided I didn't need their recognition anyway. The interviewer had looked at me with something like understanding. Sounds like there's a story there. There is, I agreed. But it's not one I'm interested in telling. The only story that matters is what I built despite it. The article came out on a Wednesday. My phone exploded again, but this time with messages from people I actually wanted to hear from. Colleagues, collaborators, investors, friends. Grandmother sent a text. You're magnificent. Dinner Friday? My mentor, Dr. Huang, emailed, That's my girl. Let's celebrate. My business partners sent champagne. My family sent nothing, and I felt nothing about their silence. A year later, I was at a medical technology conference in Boston, presenting my latest research on early Alzheimer's detection. My diagnostic tool had just been approved for clinical trials, with projections showing it could reduce diagnosis time from years to weeks. After my presentation, a woman in her 60s approached me. She was elegant, well-dressed, with kind eyes. Dr. Chen, she said, I'm Patricia Morrison. I was your mother's college roommate. I went very still. Oh? I saw your presentation at the Forbes Summit last month, she continued, and I've been following your career. I wanted to tell you something, if you have a moment. Of course, I said, curious despite myself. Your mother called me last year, Patricia said, after your graduation situation became public. She was devastated trying to understand what had happened. She asked me if I remembered what she was like before she had you, before your father left. I said nothing, just listened. I told her the truth, Patricia continued, that she had been one of the kindest, most generous people I knew, and that when your father left, something in her broke. She became someone else, bitter, focused only on protecting herself from future pain. I watched her shut down emotionally, and I watched her project all her trauma onto you. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I want you to know it wasn't about you, Patricia said. When what she did, the neglect, the favoritism, it was never about you being unworthy. It was about her being broken. That doesn't excuse it. Nothing excuses what she did to you. But I thought you might want to know that the problem was never you. I felt something crack in my chest, some piece of armor I'd been wearing for 2 lifetimes. Thank you, I whispered. For what it's worth, Patricia added. She knows what she did. She's in therapy now, trying to understand herself. She told me she doesn't expect your forgiveness, but she hopes someday you'll know that her failure to love you properly was never because you were unlovable. You were always worthy. She just couldn't see it. After Patricia left, I stood in the empty conference hall for a long time, staring at nothing. I had spent so much energy on revenge, on proving my worth, on making them see what they'd lost. And I had succeeded. I had become everything I dreamed of and more. I had my companies, my research, my success. I had grandmother and a network of people who valued me. But underneath it all, some part of me had still been that little girl, desperately trying to understand why her own mother couldn't love her. Now I knew it wasn't about me. It had never been about me. The knowledge didn't make me want to reconcile. It didn't make me want to forgive, but it did make me want to stop carrying the weight of their failure. I pulled out my phone and sent grandmother a text. Dinner tomorrow? I want to talk about expanding the foundation's scholarship program. Her response was immediate. Always. I'm so proud of you, Sarah. I smiled. I had spent my first life chasing the approval of people who couldn't give it. I had spent the first part of this second life proving they were wrong to withhold it. Maybe it was time to spend the rest of this life just living, brilliantly, successfully, joyfully, without them at all. 5 years after my graduation, my Alzheimer's diagnostic tool was on the market, being used in hospitals across the country. We had detected the disease early in over 50,000 patients, giving them precious time to plan, to undergo new treatments, to maintain quality of life longer. My neural interface company had just signed a deal with the Department of Defense to develop next-generation prosthetics for veterans. I was 33 years old and worth $200 million. I had published 2 books on neuroscience for general audiences, both bestsellers. I gave keynote speeches at conferences around the world. I had been offered positions at Harvard, MIT, and Johns Hopkins, though I had turned them all down to focus on my companies and research. And I was happy. I lived in a beautiful home in Palo Alto, walking distance from grandmother's estate. I had colleagues who respected me, friends who valued me, and work that mattered. I dated occasionally, brilliant, driven, people who understood ambition. I had adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Tesla, who followed me everywhere. I never saw my mother, Richard, or Jessica. They had moved out of the Bay Area 3 years ago, relocating to Portland. Jessica had finally gotten a stable job as an administrative assistant. Richard had taken early retirement. Mom, I heard through the grapevine, volunteered at a women's shelter and attended therapy twice a week. I didn't hate them anymore. I didn't think about them much at all. Until the day I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Dr. Chen, a woman's voice said. This is Rebecca Hartman from Oregon Health and Science University. I'm calling about your mother, Margaret Chen. My blood went cold. What about her? She's been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's, Rebecca said gently. She listed you as her next of kin. She's asking for you. I stood outside my mother's hospital room for 10 minutes before I could make myself go in. I didn't owe her this. I didn't owe her anything. I could turn around and walk away, and I would be completely justified. But I had built my entire career on helping people with this disease. I had poured my soul into creating tools for early detection because I knew how devastating it was, how it stole people's memories and identities and left only confusion and fear. I couldn't walk away from anyone suffering from it, even her. I opened the door. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner, grayer, older than her 58 years. She was sitting up in bed, and when she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Sarah," she whispered, "you came." "I came," I said, staying by the door. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. I'm so sorry to ask you here. I know I don't have the right, but I needed to see you one more time while I still remember who you are." I walked closer, slowly. "How advanced is it?" "Stage 2, she said. "Maybe stage 3. It's progressing quickly. They're trying different medications, but," she trailed off. "I've been using your diagnostic tool. Did they tell you that? The doctor here showed me the research papers. Your name was on them. I told her, 'That's my daughter.' And she looked at me like she didn't believe me." "Why would she?" I asked quietly. "Because I don't deserve to claim you," Mom said. "I know that. But Sarah, I need to tell you something before I forget. Before this disease takes everything." I pulled up a chair and sat down, but kept my distance. "I remember everything I did to you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Every missed event, every dismissal, every time I chose Jessica over you. I remember it all, and it haunts me. When I got the diagnosis, my first thought was relief, because maybe when I forget everything, I'll forget how badly I failed you." "Don't," I said. "But then I realized," she continued, "that I don't want to forget, because forgetting would be letting myself off the hook. I want to remember what I did. I want to carry that weight. It's the least I deserve." We sat in silence for a moment. "The therapist I've been seeing," Mom said, "she asked me why I did it, why I couldn't love you the way you needed. And I told her what I've never admitted to anyone. You looked exactly like him, like your father. And every time I looked at you, I felt him leaving all over again. I felt abandoned and worthless and alone. And instead of dealing with that, I made you feel that way instead." "I know," I said. "Someone told me." "Patricia," Mom guessed. "She was always smarter than me, kinder too. She said you were kind once. Before everything." "I was," Mom said. "And then I let my pain turn me into someone cruel. And by the time I realized what I'd done, you were gone. You were successful and strong, and you didn't need me. And that was exactly what I deserved." I looked at her, really looked at her. And I saw something I hadn't expected: genuine remorse. Not the performative crying from that brunch 5 years ago, but real, bone-deep regret. "I'm dying," she said simply. "Slowly but surely. This disease is going to take everything. My memories, my identity, myself, and I'll deserve every moment of it. But before it takes everything, I wanted you to know you were always worthy. From the moment you were born, you were worthy of love. I just couldn't give it to you." "Why now?" I asked. "Why can you see it now?" "Because I finally did the work," she said. "Years of therapy, facing what I did, understanding why. And now that I finally understand myself, finally can see you clearly, this disease is going to take it all away. It's poetic, really, the ultimate punishment." "I don't want you to be punished," I said, surprising myself. She looked at me shocked. "You don't?" "No," I said slowly, working through the realization as I spoke. "I wanted you to understand, to see what you did and you do. The punishment, watching you forget, watching this disease take you apart. That doesn't give me any satisfaction." "Then what do you want?" she asked. I thought about it. What did I want? "I want you to know that I'm okay," I said finally. "I want you to know that despite everything you did, I became someone I'm proud of. I built a life I love. I found people who value me. I'm happy, Mom. I'm genuinely happy. And you can't take credit for that, but you also don't get to feel like you destroyed me. You didn't. You just weren't part of my success." She nodded, crying harder. That's more than I deserve." "Probably," I agreed, Babaz, "but I don't want to carry anger toward you anymore." It's exhausting and it takes up space in my head that I'd rather use for things that matter. I stood up. I have a team that specializes in Alzheimer's care. I'm going to make sure you have access to the best treatment available. Not because you deserve it, but because I'm the kind of person who helps people with this disease. It's what I do. Sarah, but I'm not your daughter anymore, I said firmly. Not in any way that matters. I'll make sure you're cared for medically, but I can't give you more than that. I don't have more than that to give. She nodded, accepting it. Thank you, she whispered. For even that much. It's more than I earned. I walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope the treatment works. I hope you get more time. Not for me, but for you. To keep working on yourself. To maybe become the person you wish you had been. I hope so too, she said. I left and didn't look back. 10 years after my graduation, Grandmother Helen passed away peacefully in her sleep at 89 years old. She left me everything, her estate, her fortune, her legacy. At her funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives she had touched, entrepreneurs she had funded, students she had mentored, charities she had supported. I gave the eulogy, talking about a woman who had saved me in every way that mattered, who had shown me what real love looked like, who had believed in me when no one else would. My mother came to the funeral. She stood in the back, her progression into Alzheimer's noticeable but not yet severe. She didn't approach me, just nodded once from across the room. I nodded back. Jessica didn't come. Richard sent flowers. After the funeral, I inherited not just wealth, but responsibility. Grandmother had built an empire of giving, and she had left it all to me to continue. I expanded her scholarship program, focusing on overlooked students from difficult families. I funded research into neurodegenerative diseases. I established grants for women in STEM fields who were fighting against systemic barriers. I built a foundation called Second Chances, dedicated to helping people who had been underestimated, overlooked, or written off. Every student who received our scholarship got a letter from me. You are worthy, not because of what you achieve, though I hope you achieve great things. Not because of who loves you, though I hope you find people who love you well. You are worthy simply because you exist. Because you have gifts and dreams and potential. Your family may not see it. The world may not see it yet, but I see it. And this scholarship is proof that someone believes in you. Take this opportunity and build something extraordinary. Not to prove anyone wrong, though that's a nice bonus. Build it because you deserve to see what you're capable of when you are fully supported. Build it because you're worthy. I signed each letter personally. 15 years after my graduation, I was invited to give a TED Talk. The topic? Rebuilding After Neglect, How Overlooked Children Become Extraordinary Adults. I stood on that red circle and told a version of my story. Not all of it, some wounds were still private, but enough. I talked about being the forgotten child, about funding my own education, about achieving success that my family never acknowledged until strangers congratulated them. People ask me how I did it. I said how I went from being overlooked to becoming someone who couldn't be ignored, and the truth is, I had help. I told them about Grandmother Helen, about finding her at 12 and building a relationship that saved my life. But before I found her, I said, I had to make a crucial decision. I had to decide that my worth wasn't determined by the people who failed to see it. I had to believe I was valuable even when the people who were supposed to love me most acted like I wasn't. I paused, looking out at the audience. If you're the overlooked child, the forgotten one, the one who's always second place, hear me, you are not the problem. Your family's inability to value you is their failure, not yours, and you have a choice. You can spend your life trying to earn love from people who are incapable of giving it, or you can build a life so full of achievement and joy and purpose that their absence becomes irrelevant. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. I chose the second path, I said, and it was the best decision I ever made. Not because I became successful, though I did. Not because I proved them wrong, though I did that too, but because I freed myself from the exhausting work of trying to earn something that should have been freely given. I built my own family from people who chose to love me. I built my own success from my own effort. And I built a foundation to help other overlooked children do the same. Your family forgot your graduation day? Build a life so remarkable that the world won't let them forget you exist. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. 20 years after my graduation, I was 52 years old and one of the most respected neuroscientists in the world. My Alzheimer's diagnostic tool was standard practice in hospitals globally. My neural interface technology had given mobility back to thousands of paralyzed patients. I had been married for 8 years to another researcher, a brilliant woman named Rachel who understood ambition and drive. We had no children but fostered teenagers in crisis, giving them the support and love and belief I had desperately needed at their age. My mother had passed away 3 years prior, her mind almost entirely gone by the end. I had ensured she had the best care, but I hadn't visited often. Some wounds were too deep to heal, even with understanding. Jessica had reached out once, about 10 years ago, with a letter that was equal parts apology and request for financial help. I had sent her information about job training programs and wished her well. I never heard from her again. Richard died of a heart attack 7 years after grandmother. I went to the funeral out of a sense of obligation, but felt nothing when they lowered the casket into the ground. I had built a life beyond them, a life filled with purpose and achievement and genuine love. But sometimes, late at night, I still thought about that girl I had been in my first life, the one who had died alone and unloved, desperately chasing approval that would never come. "You would be so proud of us," I whispered to her memory. "We made it, we're happy, we're loved, we matter." And I knew somehow that she could rest now. We both could. On the 20th anniversary of my PhD graduation, I threw a party. Not a fancy gala or professional networking event, but a real party at my home in Palo Alto. I invited everyone who had actually been there that day 20 years ago. Grandmother's friends who had toasted my success, my mentor, Dr. Huang, my colleagues from Stanford, the people who had celebrated me when my own family wouldn't. I invited the students from my foundation, the ones who had overcome their own family neglect to achieve extraordinary things. I invited Rachel and our foster kids, 3 teenagers who were slowly learning to trust that adults could be reliable and kind. And I stood in my beautiful home, surrounded by people who had chosen to love me, who had seen my worth without needing to be convinced of it, and I felt complete. Someone asked me to give a speech, and I raised my glass. 20 years ago, I said, I walked across a stage to receive my PhD from Stanford. My family wasn't there. They were at my sister's piano recital at a community center. People nodded, knowing the story. For a long time, I was angry about that, hurt. I felt like their absence was proof that I was unlovable, that I was worthless. I paused, looking around at all the faces smiling back at me. But here's what I learned. Their absence wasn't proof of my unworthiness. It was proof of their blindness. And while they were missing my moments of triumph, all of you were there, building me up, believing in me, celebrating me. So this party isn't about that PhD anymore. It's about all of you. It's about the family I built from people who chose to be family. It's about the life I created from my own determination and your support. I raised my glass higher. To chosen family, to second chances, to proving that our worth isn't determined by the people who fail to see it. To every overlooked child who became extraordinary, not because of their family, but despite them. To us, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. We drank and laughed and celebrated. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I felt that lonely girl from my first life smile and finally let go. She had been avenged. Not through cruelty or destruction, but through something more powerful, a life well lived, surrounded by genuine love, having touched the world in meaningful ways. My family had forgotten my graduation day, but I had built a life so full of achievement and love and purpose that their forgetting became the least important detail of my story. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all.